Welcome back, everybody. It is 7:09 in the morning here on News Radio 830 KHVH. Coming up in the next hour, the Gillian Anderson Report. You do not want to miss, but it is this hour you definitely don't want to miss at all. In studio, it is the SHOPO Hour, and Brother Steve Keogh, Vice President of SHOPO. I want to welcome you and the fellas in today. Aloha to you, brother. Aloha,
Brother Rick. Thanks for having us, and always happy and grateful to be here with you and your listeners, brother. Appreciate you.
Going to be a good hour, as always. How about the formal introduction and reintroduction of the fellas we have with us today?
Sure, happy to do it. So to my right, in Mark's seat while he's doing some traveling, we got Brother Walt Gouveia coming back in for his second appearance on the show. Yeah. Walt did 28 years of service with Honolulu PD, and again, when he retired, we reached out to him and asked him if he wanted to come help us here locally at the Honolulu chapter as a business agent. He graciously, right, Walt, said yes.
Yes.
And, he's never looked back. So we're happy to have him this morning.
Tremendous. Good to see you again, Walt.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Why don't you bring that microphone right up to you so when you sing your karaoke song in a minute, we'll be able to really hear it. And Brother Steve mentioned 28 years.
Yes.
28 years.
28 years, yes.
Yeah. What do you find now, compare and contrast, from when you first joined the force, retired, and now with SHOPO? What's been gradual or great changes?
I think what we notice, and I guess this is nationwide, is overall the philosophy towards policing, the way the public looks at police officers, not in a favorable light anymore, as they used to. So that's difficult, because it's hard to get the younger generation to want to become police officers or just first responders in general.
Yeah.
So it's just it's a difficult hill to climb right now, and all first responders are having a hard time finding people to come over to do the job.
Gotcha. Maybe we can chat about that a little bit later, if that's okay. But do you mind?
Absolutely. No, please. I was going to, but no. Again, with him wearing his smoking jacket, please go ahead.
The interesting thing is the unbelievable comparison to Hugh Hefner, and the smoking jacket is on, and the man himself is here. It's the triumphant return of Brother Nick. Back in studio with us. Brother Nick, how you doing?
Thank you.
By the way, I'll clap. The other boys don't care.
A pleasure to be here, sir. A pleasure to be here. Merry Christmas, and you're all invited to the grotto afterwards. Thank you.
The grotto. Oh, man. How was your worldwide cruise that you took and have taken you away from the program for about 3 to 4 weeks?
No worldwide cruise, sorry. Oh. Just the other job, just the police job.
Oh, wow. I was looking for great adventure. Oh, but that is great adventure. Glad you're back, Brother
Thank you.
Nick.
Thank you.
Glad you're back. Gentlemen, I want to take care of traffic. We have some traffic incidents on the road. But when we come back, we're just going to delve right into topicality. It is the SHOPO Hour on News Radio, 830 KHVH. Welcome back. We have a straight shot to the bottom of the hour at 7:14 in the morning here on News Radio, 830 KHVH. Brother Steve, Brother Nick, Brother Walt in studio. If you don't mind, gentlemen, starting off with some of the news stories that we're all aware of. There is a story concerning not bike officers, but ATV officers on a North Shore beach. There was video taken of 3 officers, and one officer was navigating out, it appeared to be, out of the sand on the beach. However, when she moved forward, there were 3 children that were on the sand, and the vehicle approached them. And the reply and response from the public was, and what many may not have seen, the officer understood the situation, came off her ATV, approached to ensure all was well, and interacted with the folks that were there. However, it has caused some concern. The word training has come up once again. I was wondering, with your knowledge of this story and the reactions and commentary being shared, what would you like to share with us today, Nick?
Sure. So I'd like to start off with training first and foremost. Any officer in our department who rides an ATV is certified to ride that machine. There is a training cadre, a training program the department puts on to make sure that the officer rides correctly, rides safely, and understands how to operate the machine in certain conditions. I'd like to actually take a step forward and just say, you know what, I commend that officer for handling that machine the way that she did, managing to avoid the obstacle and then stopping and admitting that, you know, there was a situation there and taking the time to make sure that things were safe. It looks to me from what I saw on that video, and of course it's an incomplete video, we're only seeing snippets of it as usual, right? But it looks to me like the officer actually stopped and owned up to the situation. And if there is some type of investigation into it, well, hey, I would say, looks to me like the officer stopped and recognized there was a problem, and is probably willing to admit that perhaps things did go wrong. Maybe things could be done better or differently. I don't know. There's another thing I know about video as well, and we see this all the time in investigations of officers. The video looks like it's very telling, but in reality, sometimes it's not. Yeah, you're looking at perspectives, sometimes distance, visual distortions, and so on. And then just from a personal opinion, I have a degree of, I don't know how to put it. Whoever was taking that video from my personal point of view, I don't see them filming that officer as something where the person who was actually filming it had no other intention other than to embarrass the police department. I think that if, you know, there was some type of a collision or something like that, then it was the person's intention to essentially out the officer and look, the cops are messing up again, right? But if the ATV got stuck in the sand and 3 officers had to get shovels to dig it out, then you would have had the same person with their video camera going, haha, look, it takes 3 officers to get an ATV out of the sand, blah, 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 right? So no matter where you're coming from, the person who's filming it, I think, just had the perspective of, I'm just going to embarrass a bunch of police officers. That's how I see it.
And then if you
Walt?
look at that clip at the end, there wasn't, oh, by the way, those are the ATVs that were purchased with questionable funds from COVID. So there was some bias while that was being recorded.
Okay, Steve?
You know, Rick, the takeaway that I got from that video is I'm just curious, as someone that was watching that video, how do we go from officers on ATVs patrolling a beach to somehow segueing into it's a misappropriation of resources? What are they doing on an empty beach? Why are they on ATVs? First of all, the whole purpose of patrol is to patrol all areas, whether there's people or not. And, you know, when the news reaches out to certain individuals for quote unquote expert commentary, you know, I think it's important that if all you get from an expert commentator is negative criticism, how is that a balanced report? If everything, and then again, what makes you an expert exactly? Just because you did something for a long period of time, does that make you the best at it? Does that make you an expert? I would question that. So I would just remind the public that we saw officers on ATVs. The ATV allegedly came close to some children that were laying on the beach. Okay, well, if they're children, are the parents around? And if the parents see that the officers on ATV are coming, isn't it the responsibility for everybody to just make sure that it's safe? And the ATV officers are there because it's not something that's accessible with foot patrol. It's not something that's accessible with a police car. I think we could agree as a community that if we have resources that allow areas to be patrolled and have police presence, that we would think that's a good thing. Okay? And listen, HPD, you know, Chief Joe comes on your show. He can defend his choices, but where I kind of took exception, especially from a retired deputy chief who's claiming to be an expert in law enforcement, that he wants to take that narrative and start questioning whether or not the ATV patrols are necessary and why are they on an empty beach? Well, how do they know the beach is going to be empty before they get there? It's a beach. Wouldn't we all agree that sometimes the beach has people and sometimes they don't? For me, as watching that video, I was just surprised that somebody that wore the uniform at an extremely high level decided to create a narrative questioning district leadership and then the leadership all the way up the chain. I think it was inflammatory and I think it was irresponsible.
It is already 7:21 in the morning. So the general public perception is all that we see and all that we're provided. And as I watched that video with the apparent lurch of the vehicle, I think the point about perspective is very important, because from that perspective, it appeared to be very, very close. However, when I do my video work, whether it's in the studio or out, perspectives are very inaccurate in many cases. And I saw the POV from that video, and it's very easy to assume ATV out of control, children were in harm's way, officer was not doing anything to mitigate. That could be a conclusion if you're predisposed to that conclusion. And Walt said so eloquently at the outset. The change is the perception of our officers and the general public. And then to have one of your own take the coals and just stoke this fire without any additional knowledge or expertise in this particular case, I, as just a public member, I was kind of shaking my head and going, wait a minute. This, and last point, journalism is about both sides of a story. Both sides. So if you're going to have an individual that is critical, you need to have the other side of the story. Whether it's comms, whether it's chief, whether it's officer with a follow-up call, interview, whatever it might be. So I really encourage our friends, just step back and let's get the whole side. For instance, with you being in studio, there's the other side that's very important. I spilled my bottle of water.
No, Rick, and you know what? You're articulate. That's well spoken and articulate as always. And listen, we've been on your show, and if officers make mistakes,
you're first to admit it.
We're the
first of all.
It's going to be corrected, admitted, and put out there. My issue with the piece again is that went. How do you go from that piece to criticizing manpower, questioning why they're there? It seemed like it was an inflammatory piece to throw shade rather than inform and educate.
So the way I saw it before we even spoke, when I heard that commentary, there could have been, probably was, a patrol of the entire area. But officers need to talk and meet and converse and etc. If they're together at that moment, how does the individual not know what else is going on, Nick?
Yeah, I'd like to just reiterate, and thanks for helping me put that idea into better words. But again, I just don't think that the person who was taking that video had any good intention taking the video whatsoever. I think it was a pessimistic approach to the situation regardless, and they were just hoping or waiting for something to happen that was wrong rather than actually backing up the police officers that were there and saying, hey, there's law enforcement on this beach and we're proud to have them. Also, I'd like to say, those details out there in that district, their job is to roam several beaches through the course of the day. They are not just fooling around. When the public says we have problems on beaches, we have homeless on beaches, we have people drinking on beaches, we have people disrespecting the land, you may have some DLNR issues that they're asking the police department to deal with. That's why these officers are out there. Okay, and they're rolling in pairs or more because that's what they do. They have constant backup. They're issuing citations. They're giving warnings. It's also a PR thing, saying hello, and that's their purpose out there. So it's incorrect for anybody to assume that just because the perspective of that video is showing nothing but 3 officers and a couple of kids on a beach, that there's not anything else going around on the beach or going on around the beach, particularly behind whoever's taking the video, right? There could have been 200 people at a party behind whoever was taking that video that you can't see, drinking, causing a problem, and so on. So those details do serve a purpose, and that's why they're out there, to make sure that people are safe when they are enjoying recreational beaches in that part of the island.
Well put. Well put. It is already 7:25 in the morning. Final on this particular story. You mentioned before investigation. Would there be an investigation of something of this nature? And what rights and advice, counseling would the officer in question receive?
So, Rick, not to be evasive or vague, but it depends. Okay. Obviously, the command can institute an investigation. Also, the public. If the public makes a complaint on an officer and there's a notarized copy, there's going to be a UI coming down from PSO that the officer sergeant needs to investigate. So there's a thorough process, and then where the union steps in is if the investigation could lead to discipline, then there's forms and paperwork that need to be filled out with union reps maybe there or not, just to make sure, again, that or different articles within our CBA are following.
Okay, gotcha. Boy, already at the bottom of the hour, fellas. Thank you very much for covering that for us. With a remaining couple of minutes before our break, I want to kind of turn a little bit. Holidays are upon us. And I know we've chatted about this in the past, but now Thanksgiving is done, and Christmas and New Year's in front. The allocation of officers for road patrols, for DUI checkpoints, remind us. I just really want to get this message home. Don't get behind that wheel. I don't care if you've had one. Please do not drink and drive. Can you share a bit about holiday presents and what the general public should know about law enforcement during this season?
Well,
Walt?
as everybody knows, DUI roadblocks will be out there. There is no doubt at multiple locations throughout the island. With all the options out there today, there is no need to drink and drive. You have so many options out there that you can utilize. Don't let your pride get the best of you and make you get behind that wheel, because that's what does it, your pride.
Steve?
Yeah, I agree with Walt, Rick. And again, I commend you for when you get behind, you're in your studio, you're doing your thing, making people aware with all the ride shares, with the potential risk, it's just not worth it. And again, we say this every year, and it's unfortunately, Nick works in traffic. He can go on. People get arrested. They get arrested and they end up hurting people in accidents, and then they're charged criminally, and everybody's lives are turned upside down, Rick. So yeah, just don't do it. Take a ride share. You want to enjoy adult beverages with friends and family and have that community? Great. Just don't drive. It's not worth it.
Brother Nick, final thought before the break.
Yes, just to reinforce it, fair warning. There are a lot of DUI roadblocks out there. They've been going on in November. They're going to continue through December. They are all over the place, and also our traffic division also has federal grants this month and next month for occupant safety and other things as well. So there is a heavy presence on the road. Enforcement is out there. It's going to happen. So don't take any risks. Don't take any chances. Just utilize your resources and stay out of trouble.
I'd just like to say one final thing. This isn't a game of gotcha. This isn't an orchestrated attempt to put everybody under the... It's enforcing the law. It's the existing law that we've all known forever and ever. Amen. And it's just, we all know, as Walt said, we all know. You don't drink and drive. Well, don't. And you won't have to worry about it, because the consequence, if you get busted by being, being a moron behind the wheel and you're drunk, dude, you deserve everything that is on your way. You just don't do it. It's amazing the amount of damage, injury, death, and more, not only to those on the road, but officers who are responding, or even at checkpoints. It's just don't do it, guys. That's all. It is 7:30 in the morning. News Radio 830 KHVH. By the way, did Uber have a Black Friday sale? Because I should have logged on and stocked up, without a doubt. 7:30 in the morning, SHOPO Hour continues. More news and information that we'll cover with you and your telephone calls. Welcome back. It is 7:36 in the morning here on News Radio 830 KHVH. Delighted that we're reunited. The SHOPO Hour. Brother Steve, Brother Nick, and of course, Brother Walt in Studio 2. If I could transition for a moment again, gentlemen, and this is in regard to missing persons. There's a report stating that, unfortunately, and this is statewide, Big Island here and other islands, that we have missing persons. People that we have not heard from, haven't a clue, going back in one story about 3 months plus. Could you help us define what is a missing person, technically, legally, and then what is the process, procedure, protocol in addressing a missing persons case?
So the common conception about missing persons has to be unaccounted for 24 hours, so on and so forth. Well, in reality, a missing persons type case involves somebody who is just disappeared for unknown reasons, and typically there's some type of exigency behind it, i.e. the person may have Alzheimer's, the person may be special needs, the person may be suicidal or homicidal, or the person may take some type of special medication or have some type of special hospitalization or medical requirement that requires them to be accounted for constantly throughout the course of the day. When somebody is worried that someone has gone missing and they call 911, officers are assigned to investigate. Our dispatchers are trained to take a huge amount of information from the call taker initially in order to get a good perspective of what the officers are going to be looking at. They're going to ask for names, birth dates, physical descriptors. Again, do you have an idea of why this person went missing? Did they tell you they want to hurt themselves or something like that? Do they have cognitive issues? The officer will get there and perform an initial investigation. Once the determination is made that there are qualifiers to make a missing persons case, the officer has a whole preset set of instructions to follow as far as what questions to ask. The officer will then authorize the dispatcher to put out a island-wide all points bulletin for that person. That person's information is then entered into a database that is accessible by law enforcement statewide, so that any law enforcement officer out there who encounters this person can immediately figure out, okay, yes, this person is on a missing persons list, right? So we can account for them and get them back to where they're supposed to be. And then the officers in the Honolulu Police Department are required to notify the Criminal Investigation Division, which has a section of detectives whose responsibility it is to track down missing persons. If a missing person is found, the patrol officer's responsibility is to verify that this is the person, find out if the person went missing as a result of any criminal activity, i.e., essentially were you kidnapped? Did someone take you against your will? Or, are you just having a bad day? The patrol officer also has the responsibility of kind of doing a mental health or medical assessment. Are you emaciated? Have you been out for several days and are you dehydrated? Are you suffering from the dementia that your family said you are suffering from? And we have to get maybe some specialists in here, maybe an ambulance or something like that to help you out with. And then if the officer can kind of get a mental health assessment, yeah, this person did go missing because they do want to hurt themselves, and the officer has an obligation to try and get that person into some type of mental health treatment type of a situation, either through hospital or some type of a health care. So there's a lot of moving parts to it. I know on this show we always say police work is not just as easy as it looks. This is one of the 1 billion responsibilities that a beat officer has when they respond to a call. So I know that was a lot to say, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Got it. Brother?
Yeah, Rick, I'll jump in. So, just from a community standpoint, a lot of times missing persons within urban Honolulu has to do with elderly that usually have some form of dementia. And the good news is we usually find them. If it's not the same day, it's the next day. And Nick did a great job at kind of breaking down the steps. So missing persons usually deals with more elderly. Now, with our young people, with our kids, that's going to be classified as runaway. A lot of times when kids don't show up to school or they leave the house, that young kids are not labeled missing persons. That's a status offense runaway, just to kind of make a clarification and just for the listeners to kind of understand that.
Is that under 18?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It's a status offense, meaning it's not criminal in nature, but, parents call and say, hey, my daughter or son left the house without permission. They ran away and I haven't seen them in a couple hours. So we would make a runaway, and that's another form. And then with the missing persons, again, it's medicines, known hangouts. What's also important, Gain, is we like to get a picture of the person if we have that. Because then, as Nick said, many things are uploaded. So let's say there's a missing persons case made in urban Honolulu, and then we go to the windward side, and an officer maybe finds an elderly person at the beach kind of disorientated. If all of that is uploaded on their MDC in the computer, they can see a picture that was uploaded with the case, and then we can make an identification there. So
Gotcha.
just a little bit more info. That's all right. Yeah.
No, appreciate it very much. Brother Walt, your thoughts about this and any experience that you can share working a missing persons case?
Well, one of the most important things, I know everybody hears it on TV or they hear other mainland departments officers may say, well, you need to wait 24 hours or 48 hours or what have you. That is not the case. Do not wait. If there is something suspicious or somebody, an elder person that needs medication or something that could, place them in danger if they don't have it, you need to call right away because time is of the essence. They could be right around the block. I had a case years ago where this elderly lady got on the bus from Eva Beach, and we located her in Kaimaki.
Wow.
And she had nothing on her, no type of identification. Just so happened one of the neighbors were nearby, and they could speak her language. And in her mind, she was a teacher again, and she was trying to get to school. But she was a teacher in Japan, and she was just totally lost. So it took about 6 hours before the family finally called and realized that she wasn't home. So of course, protocols have since changed since then, but it's a lot easier now. You can just call an ambulance, and the ambulance will take her to the hospital. Or where back in the day they wouldn't do that. Officer would have to stay with that person no matter how long it took. So the key, I guess the point I want to drive home is don't wait. You don't need to wait 24 hours. Call right away.
How are welfare checks, if that's the correct term, how are those requested and what constitutes them being performed?
Typically, a welfare check is requested by somebody who essentially says, I'm worried for my friend or my family member's safety because something has happened, and then they kind of have to explain what the background of the situation is. I've seen welfare checks where people have said, I am part of an online group, and I know that Nick is on the group, and Nick has put some posts up there that say that he's not feeling very well and he may want to hurt himself, and I know he lives at this address. Can you check on him? I've seen welfare checks where people say, Nick has an alcohol problem. I haven't heard from him for a few days. He's gone to rehab several times. Could you just check and see if he's okay? I've seen them where people essentially say, I was talking to somebody on the phone and the phone just disconnected and I'm super worried, and can you go check on him? And it's more kind of like maybe a little overreactionary. But when a patrol officer gets the assignment of welfare check, we don't have the ability to really say yes or no. We actually have to physically go there and make some kind of an attempt to account for this person. And welfare checks, like you guys can probably say, they can go in a bunch of different directions. It can literally be like, no, I'm sorry, my phone died. It ran out of power. That's why the phone conversation disconnected, to literally, yeah, I just fell off the wagon and I need help. Can you help me? I do want to hurt myself, or yeah, something bad happened. I was the victim of a crime. I need to make a case.
Okay. So can I share just briefly? Back in the early days of this program, I seemed to have irritated some, to the point where I would get letters and there was a dead mouse put in a bag on my front doorstep. Things of that nature. And so I'm always here at work. This is years and years ago, about 20 years ago. And so I would make sure that I spoke with Berna and the kids to make sure that we're good. You good? Great. have a good morning, see you soon. But there were times, nothing. Try phones and all this. And I called HPD, non-emergency, said, listen, I know this part, but is there any way? And without hesitation, they went to our house, knocked on the door, everything was okay. That, to me, is, and not to be abused and overused, but when grave concerns, to have our officers step in and truly take care of other folks like this, boys, that's just another reason I have deep affection for what you do and how you do it, because there ain't nothing more important than your family. Amen to that. So many, many belated thanks. It only takes me 20 years to thank you guys, so I'll work on that. We have a few minutes. 7:47 already. Jeez. Oh, wow. Man, we'll be back and wrap things up this edition of the SHOPO Hour in a moment. Welcome back, everybody. Once again, the SHOPO Hour continues at 521-80. I didn't even ask if you wanted to give a call today. If you would like, we have a few minutes remaining. 521-8383, our telephone number. And once again, with Brother Steve, Brother Nick, Brother Walt in studio with us today. First of all, I want to thank you for all the conversation leading up to this. We covered a lot of great ground today, as always. If you wouldn't mind, there has been a whole spate, and this is just observational and concerns in the community about the Westside. We just had reports of the stabbing of two Westside in the past day or so. And anything you would like to convey to our friends in regard to the number of crimes reported, crimes committed, and what in general the general public should know in these areas?
My first reaction to share with the community is people are getting arrested for doing these crimes. And we have really, really, really talented detectives. Obviously, crime occurs. Look, there's plainclothes units. We have narco units. HPD is definitely aware that if there's things going on, they're aware of it. And I just think it's important to remember that if we look in the headlines that have happened, people that have committed these various crimes, they're getting arrested and they're going to get their day in court. That's what I'm happy about. I wish how's this? I wish the crime wasn't happening. But if it does happen, it's the police jobs to try to identify who's doing it, and if arrest is appropriate, make the arrest, and then the wheels of justice turn. But people are getting arrested for some of that, criminal behavior that's happening on the West Side.
So I'm going to transition a bit because I want to make sure we have enough time, and I'll go to each one of you. I've been referring to news, information, stories that are in the ether. But I'd like for you, if you wouldn't mind, to share a story of a member that has performed above and beyond that we would never know about unless you shared it with us. Is there a particular member in their call of duty that has really risen to the top, did above and beyond, and that we can hear to counterbalance a lot of the information that is out in the public domain?
I wish that the general public, Rick, I don't have one specific name, and I'm not being evasive with your question. I would say that if the general public had an opportunity to watch the interactions between the police department and the public when the body cameras are rolling, I think they would be completely shocked at just the level of service that this community gets from the officers, whether it's on Maui, whether it's on the Big Island, Kauai, or here. I would say the interactions between officers in the community, it's these little interactions, okay? And it doesn't have to be a criminal type of situation. It could be something as simple as saying hello, giving directions, giving mentorship. I think, to your point, if there was ever a way that these body cameras could just be visible and you could just see the officers interacting throughout the day. Because to your point, I think where you're going with this, it's a lot of negative. It's always negative. It's always negative. There's not a lot of positive. And I would say that on a patrol watch, when you have 20 officers that show up to roll call and they're getting ready to do a a 13 and a half hour day. They have multiple interactions with those people in the community throughout the day, several, maybe 4 or 5 for each officer. And if you look at that, the takeaways can be real special. Off the top of my head, I can't think of just one person. I'm sure when the show ends, something will hit my mind. But I tell you, the men and women that put the uniform on and wear the badge with pride and honor in all the counties, it's what they love to do when they come to work, and just interacting with the communities and having that one-on-one reaction, whether it's simple as saying hi, mentoring something, asking a question, helping in any way they can.
So my objective is to personalize.
Yeah.
Is to, and even if you don't want to share a name or just the anecdotal standpoint, I think it would be great to hear. And Brother Nick?
So one idea popped into my head, one story that I could tell you myself and a partner of mine one day. Missing persons case. We're standing, talking story, talking shop, and we were in a parking lot at an elementary school. And as we pulled into the elementary school parking lot, we saw a man, an older man, standing at the driveway entrance, looking at traffic as traffic was going by. And it was kind of a weird thing, because that was a place that nobody ever stood. And we were familiar with that parking lot, so we kind of had a feel of that neighborhood. So we pull in and we're talking story, and all of a sudden, here comes an all points bulletin from dispatch for a missing person, elderly man, and they start describing the man, and it's him to a T. And my partner and I both go, "Oh, that's got to be the guy." So we run out of the corner, and luckily he's still standing there. Okay. This is a man, Walt said earlier, his story about the female with dementia. This man also suffered from dementia. Common story with people that have that cognitive issue. They have a goal in mind, and they're set on that goal, and that's what they're going to do, right? If she's going to go back to Japan to teach, that's what she's going to do. This guy's goal, I'm not kidding, it's kind of funny, he wanted to go to Hooters. That was his goal. And that's what he decided to do. And he got on a bus, and like a lot of people in that situation, he ended up in the wrong place where he knew nothing, where he was not familiar with it all, and he was still trying to get to his goal. Luckily, he was still standing there when we found him. Okay. If he had walked off, we would have been searching all over the place for this guy, and hopefully we would have found him. But that's just one of those kind of crazy situations that actually happens routinely to police officers, in this trade, where we were able to approach him. He was calm. We asked him, "Are you so-and-so?" He said yes. And immediately we jump on the radio within 30 seconds after that all points bulletin. And we say, "Central, we've got the guy right here. We're not joking. He's actually right here. Can you send his family down?" They came within 20 minutes and he was back home. So we really lucked out.
I want to thank you and your partner for helping me that day.
You're absolutely welcome.
and so very much.
So that Hooters, I think, is still there. I think it's still there.
I'm not sure, but still. Brother Walt, would you mind share a bit? We have just a couple of moments left, but your thoughts.
It's like Nick and Steve said. Officers encounter those types of situations on a regular basis more often than people realize, and it's just one of those things that it doesn't hit the media. We're told when you're in the academy, this is a thankless job. When you're out there, don't expect any thanks. Don't look for any thanks. You just do your job. You do what you're trained to do, and you move on to the next case. And that's what officers do. We just move on. We just keep going.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said. Is there any way, does public have access to body cam footage?
No, and they really shouldn't. That's released, obviously, at the discretion of the chief. It was just more me saying, and actually Walt said it better than I did. It's these interactions that happen on a daily basis, and cops just do it. They don't look for thanks. They don't look for recognition. They just get up and do the job every day.
Because I would really, I think that'd be a great public service to be able to eyewitness. And the last part, just be cool, guys that are listening. And I know that you're the most Akamai in the entire state. But I know that when I go up to an officer and just say, "Hey, thank you very much for what you do for us," that you can tell that it's very much appreciated. And it only takes a moment. So I would encourage our friends who are listening to take that moment when you see an officer and just share. a brief moment. We're already at the top of the hour. Would you quit being so interesting? Because the time Brother Nick is going, don't we have another hour? Brother Nick, thank you for being back with us.
Thank you for having me, and Merry Christmas.
And Brother Steve.
Rick, thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Nick, so very much. Brother Walt, good to see you again, bro.
Thank you, Rick. Glad to be here. Thank you very much.
I want to thank all of our friends, all the members of SHOPO, and especially you for dialing up and listening to this hour every Monday at this time. We do have the Gillian Anderson report coming straight ahead, but in the meantime, wishing you a very good morning. Still the 7th favorite day of the week, but now 6.5 after spending time with the boys. Good morning, Hawaii, coming up to 8.